Hi, everyone. In today's Third Thursday discussion, we are going to be talking about how to write a good PickFu poll question. And so, like always, I'm here with the PickFu co-founders, Justin Chen and John Lee.
Hey, everyone.
My name is Kim Kohatsu. I am the CMO at PickFu. And as always, if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to enter them in the comments on Facebook and YouTube, and we will address them live. If you're watching the replay and you have questions, you can also submit them here at this link, and we will get to them at next time. So what we're going to do in today's session is we are going to share 3 tips that we have found over all of the years of running PickFu about how to ask a good poll question. We have found that this is sort of a hang-up point for some of our customers who aren't sure, what should I put in this box? So we will go over some tips, and then we are going to unveil a new tool that's going to help make all of that easier. And then last but not least, we will reveal this month's free poll winner, because we're going to do a giveaway. And at that same link below, you can enter to win your own free poll. So let's get started. The main thing I want to impart when it comes to how to write a good PickFu question is really to keep it simple. I think that a lot of times it's very easy to overthink things. And really what we found is the plainer you can keep your language, the better. And, the reason this is important is because if your question is biased, then your answers will also be biased. And so you just want to make sure that you are giving your test a good environment, so that you can rely on what you see. All right, so let's dig in. Justin, why don't you kick us off with our first tip?
Sure. Yeah, so the first tip is to avoid leading words in your question. So these are words that are kind of expressing some kind of sentiment ahead of time, and these could be conscious or unconsciously added to your question. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see some examples of that. We've got 3 examples here, and we've bolded the words that are kind of the offending issue here. There could be positive bias and there could be negative bias. And when you say something like, how much did you enjoy this product video, you're kind of implying that they did enjoy it, when in fact you're just trying to see what their sentiment was. So if you look at your question and you see some kind of judgmental word in there, you can probably just try to replace it with what you're trying to gauge. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see some ways to correct these leading word issues. So instead of asking how much did you enjoy this product video, you can just ask them to rate their satisfaction of this product video. In the previous example, we had one asking how responsible Americans, responsible Americans wear masks in public. And you could just take out the word responsible and just ask whether or not they should.
That's right.
And the last one, we're doing unhappiness, and that's really just trying to measure satisfaction, where you were previously saying that, you were implying that people weren't unhappy, when in fact there could be happy people with their internet provider.
That's right. You really want to keep your questions fact-based instead of opinion-based, because you're asking for opinions and you don't want to impart an opinion in the question itself. Yeah,
I think a lot of times this can happen when people are kind of going in to try to confirm something that they're already thinking. Like, oh, I assume that everyone is unhappy, so I'm going to try to confirm it with this PickFu poll, which may be fine, but you should step back and try to measure the objective satisfaction or whatnot of the internet provider, as opposed to implying that they are unhappy.
Right. Great. All right. Tip number 2.
Cool. Yeah. So our second tip of the day for writing better poll questions is to not make assumptions. Now, you might on surface, you might think that this is similar to having leading questions, but it's actually a little bit different because we're talking here about making assumptions about the audience and the people who are actually responding to the poll. So sometimes users will write questions assuming that there's something about the respondents or the panelists who are answering the question that are not safe assumptions to make. So an example question is, how often do you find outdated or irrelevant information when searching for skate parks? Now, there's leading words in there as well, but this question, in terms of assumptions, this question assumes that these respondents do actually search for skate park info. I don't remember the last time I searched for skate park info, so I don't think it's a safe assumption to make that anyone who sees this question would have searched for skate park info in the recent past. Now, this was an actual poll that one of our users ran, and I can't say that this poll really got the best responses.
Nice.
So now there's a couple of different ways to kind of fix this. So one way to fix this is to structure your question in a way that almost anyone coming off the street, any random person, could provide a useful answer for. So taking that example that we just went over, you could restructure it as, if you were to look online for a skate park, what would you type in the search engine? Or, are you aware of any skate parks in your area? If yes, how did you find out about it, right? So if you think about these two versions, they could apply to anyone answering the question without making that assumption that they did recently search for a skate park. The other way that we would recommend trying to fix assumptions in your questions is to use our audience targeting. So PickFu does segment our panel to a lot of different audiences, and we do allow targeting to pretty specific audiences, such as dog owners, coffee drinkers, wine drinkers, Amazon Prime shoppers, and so on. So you can use our audience targeting traits so that you can safely make some assumptions. So for example, if you were selling a pet product, you could ask dog owners, what is the most important factor for you in deciding what to feed your dog? If you were targeting dog owners in your poll, then that's a safe assumption to make in your question. Or coffee drinkers, which feature would you rather have in a coffee maker? So by using the audience targeting, you can make sure that you can target the right question to the right audience. Now, I'm sorry to announce that we do not have skate park aficionados as a segment for audience targeting yet.
We're working on it.
We're working on it. Yeah.
All right. So tip number 3 for today is you only want to ask one thing at a time. One of the temptations I think that comes up is, you have this opportunity to ask a question of 50 or 100 or 200 people, and you want to make the most of it. And so what happens a lot of the time is users will just pack too much in there, and, it kind of jumbles things up. So what I mean by that is sometimes you might ask for two unrelated things, right? But PickFu only allows respondents to give you a single answer, right? They can only vote once, or they've only got one place to input their opinion. And what happens is it leads to confusion for the respondents. And when you see the end result, it's going to be confusing for you because everybody kind of did a different thing. So what do I mean by that? This is also a real poll that was recently run. It asks, which bottle looks more premium and which one are you more likely to purchase? Now, this user then showed 2 bottle designs. And what if, I'm a respondent and I think option A looks more premium, but I'm a price conscious, buyer. And so I would probably buy B. Which question did you really want me to answer? And what am I voting on? And what happens is because you've asked 2, separate and unrelated things, everybody's kind of left to their own devices to answer how they please. And everybody's going to do it a little bit differently. So this is almost an assumption too, that people will want the more premium bottle, which maybe they don't. And so what you really want to do is make sure that you are focusing your question so that you're only asking for one thing. Now, one really common scenario where we see this mistake is for things like a different book title and a different book cover, right? You might not know, okay, well, I like the title in A, but I like the cover design in B, so what do I vote for? Another way that we see this is with business names and logos. So I'm going to show you an example. This user was asking, which business name do you prefer for a vitamin brand? But the options given were given in a logo design. And what happens here is that some respondents will vote based off of the logo they like better. Some will vote on the name they like better. Some will do some combination of the two. And that's the thing, is you really don't know how everybody judged because you kind of jumbled it up. And so yes, like this poll has a winner, but was that really the winner? Do people really like the name, which is what you were probing for? Or was that influenced by the logo? So really you want to only ask one thing at a time and make sure that that's the thing that you're looking for, and your options are setting you up to only get answers about that one thing. Now, those are our 3 tips for today. There are more. You can certainly visit our blog, and there's tons of tips there for more info. Specifically, you can go to pfu.li/questions, and you'll see basically what we just covered, but with a lot more detail. So I certainly encourage you to do that. But if all of that was a little bit, overwhelming, the good news is that we have just introduced a new tool to help make this all easier. So I'm going to go to PickFu.com, and I'm going to start a new poll. And John, why don't you take us through this tool?
Cool. So this is a tool that we just launched recently. Internally, we're calling it a question builder. Basically, what we did was we realized that users were sometimes would have issues trying to figure out the right question to ask, which is one of the reasons why we're talking about this on this third Thursday. So what we did was we went through a ton of our questions. We looked at a bunch of polls and tried to group them into use cases, into basically figuring out what the users were trying to do with those questions. And then we took those scenarios and crafted our own questions that would try to avoid the bias, avoid assumptions, avoid asking too many things at once, trying to avoid the mistakes that we talked about earlier. And so it's a short, simple question builder in case you're not sure exactly how to phrase your question. So when you go and you start your next poll, right by that poll question label, you're going to see a little new link with a light bulb that says choose from a list. If you click that choose from a list, you'll get a small pop-up window. And this is our question builder. So it'll help you choose a question. It's really simple because all you need to do is choose which industry you're in. We have different categories of questions that you can choose from. So let's say you're selling in e-commerce. You would choose e-commerce, and then the next thing, just choose what are you looking to do. Currently we have 6 different scenarios and 6 different use cases that we have questions for. You can open up that select drop down, and then choose from the 6 that are available. So in this case, you can compare a product listing against a competitor, or we can try a different one where, sure, like choosing product variations. So if you're trying to figure out what product variations to sell, you can choose product variations. You'll see the pop-up that has the question there with a fill in the blank. So this is kind of like Mad Libs, if you've ever played with that in the past. We have specific blanks in these question templates for you to fill in the right context in the right place in the question to get the best responses from the panels. So here it says, which product would you rather buy? Product is a placeholder. If you hover over that, you'll see a little pop-up that gives you an example. There's also helpful text underneath that gives recommendations of what you would want to use what you would want to fill in that blank. For example, if you're selling an ice cube mold, you could put in ice cube mold. Which ice cube mold would you rather buy? Now, additionally, under that, there's that little light bulb with the pro tip. That's a pro tip about the question itself, so about the poll itself. So not just a tip on what to fill in this question blank, but when you're actually building out the rest of your poll, types of images to use, recommendations for the types of polling, types of comparisons, and so on. So you can actually go through, check out all the different use cases and different options for your industry to get ideas on how to run the best polls and what other polls other users in your industry or category are running. So after you've filled out the blank, chosen your question, filled out the blank, you just hit use this question, and that'll automatically populate that question into the question field there. And you're off to the races. You're good to go to fill out the rest of your poll form and publish that poll.
Yeah, and if there is something, you still want to edit further, you do have the option to add more text here. So you still can customize it based off of, whatever your needs are. But keep in mind, like we said, you do want to keep it as plain and as simple as possible to make sure that you're creating an objective environment.
Right. And the questions that we have listed are the ones that we see pop up the most. But if there are other use cases that you want to use PickFu for, that you're having trouble formulating the right question that you don't see listed, feel free to reach out. We'll definitely work with you to try to help you figure out the right question to write.
Definitely. info@pickfu.com. Somebody will certainly be happy to help you. You can also, again, visit this link and we will try to address your question in our next Third Thursday. So that was really great. Speaking of, one of the things that we do on Third Thursday is giveaways. And we had some entries for winning a free poll. And our winner this month is Rena. And Rena is a brand new Amazon seller. She's never used PickFu before. So this is her first PickFu poll. And not only are we going to show you the poll that we ran for you, Rena, we are going to do an in-depth discussion of your answers and, help you with perhaps some next steps as well. So if you're watching this and you would like us to do the same thing for you as we're about to do for Rena, please visit the link below. So Justin, why don't you tell us what was going on with Rena's poll that she won?
Yeah, so basically she was looking to test out different main image options for a potential product, which is resistance bands. And so she's got two variations here. Option B, I think, is the original one. Option A is the one that she was looking to change it to. And so what we did is we ran a poll against the targeted audience of medium and high exercise enthusiasts, I suppose. And so what that means is that they're exercising at least once per week. So there's three levels that we do gauge for. The lowest one is less than 1 or 0, and medium, I believe, is 1 to 3, and high is 4+. So we wanted to get people who are actually in the mindset of exercising to give feedback on this. So as you can see, that option A actually won by quite a good margin here. And there's actually some pretty good comments talking for both sides, actually. I think people who liked option B were talking about how they like to see all the things that you're going to get laid out, including the bag and all the pieces laid out. But the people who liked option A like to see the product in use. And I think when it's a product that people don't necessarily know how to use, it's very helpful to show the product demonstration in as many places as you can. And so if we look through some of the responses, you'll actually see some of the commentary there.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, they did like to see how to use the product. I like, the action shot, how But what was interesting about this is both men and women really responded well to the image. And what we've seen that is interesting is in other exercise products, sometimes if the model, if it's a female model and she's bearing a little too much skin, if it looks like you're just trying to use sex appeal, we've seen that women can actually be quite turned off by that. And so it was interesting that this sort of fitspiration worked for both genders.
Yeah, I think there was even a comment in there that said that it helped them visualize themselves using it. And I don't know if we can find that one, but we could probably look at the gender and see. It may be in that pinned one that you have.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, I think both images are actually, they follow pretty good best practices of what we've seen for Amazon e-commerce main images, really filling the frame as much as possible and reducing as much white space as possible for those main images. Yeah, just it looks like option A, one of the recommendations we do say is if you can show the product in usage, try it out, and in this case, that definitely showed that people do like seeing that product in use.
Yeah, the last thing that people did note in the comments was the fact that option A did indicate that there were 4 resistance levels, which is kind of implied, but like if you're not familiar with the resistance bands, then you may just think that it's 4 different colors, right?
That's a good point.
For some reason, there are different widths and different colors, but when it's clearly called out on the image, it helps educate you that that's what's going on here. You're actually getting 4 different bands of different resistance.
Yeah.
Right.
And so another way that we also recommend in terms of analyzing these results, I mean, looking at it on the surface, it looks like option A was a runaway winner, right? Score of 68 to 32. But it's also important to look at why people chose the alternate, the option that did not win the poll. Because a lot of times when you look at those responses, you'll see little nuggets to understand, well, there were people who did choose this other option. Let's understand why. And if you look at some of those responses, you'll see people mentioning that it shows that it comes with a carrying case, right? So that's an idea that if you wanted to iterate further for your next set of images, if you're not satisfied with just this winning image and you want to iterate further, there's an idea for you right there where, hey, this was a key selling point from option B. We could try to incorporate showing that that there is a carrying case for our next iteration of that image.
Yeah, there's even a comment that's mentioning the direction of the bands, which you could try out in a version of option A.
That's right. Justin, what other sort of next steps would you recommend?
Yeah, so the other thing that you can do is, and you could do this actually before running this kind of test, is take your main image or potential main image that you're going to run with and compare it to some of the top competitors in your space. So what we did here is we just did a search for resistance bands and took some of the top main images. And if you go to the next one, actually, go to the other poll first. Yeah, so what we did here first is we took the old main image, which is option B in this case, and we compared them to A, C, and D, which are some of the top competitors. And we actually see that option A is the winner in this case. Option B actually did pretty good. And you'll see that the comments are kind of similar in that they like the layout of option B. It has like the bag, and the thickness of the bands is more visible than in C and D, which is interesting because they're kind of like a flat photo, and so it's more two-dimensional than 3. So not too bad, but what's nice is now that we've got a relative comparison, after we've generated the next version, which you'll see in the next poll, we can now compare the new version against the competitors. And we actually do find that the new version wins against the, so if all things were equal, ranking and, stars and price and all that kind of stuff, like this is a more appealing image than and product potentially than the competitors.
Right. Yeah, and what's amazing is, not only do you get that insight, that people are telling you why they like the image, you also get these results fast. This original test that we ran, again with 50 respondents that exercise, you know, in the medium to high range, it took only 25 minutes.
It's crazy.
Total. So, you know, one of the things is, you know, Rena, if you had run this test yourself, you know, you could have honestly had your graphic designer, you know, work on a new version, you know, that day. And you could run some of these follow-up tests that we're recommending that same day and really get going on, you know, improving that listing and improving those visual assets.
Yeah, I mean, I ran the other 2 tests just this morning, like like an hour before we got on the call. So it's very fast, and you get so much written explanation, so much written feedback that you can work with. And if you were to do that first test, that the first competitive test, before you had even generated another option, you would have gotten a lot of feedback that, let's see, if we read through some of the explanations, would probably say like we should have an image that has the product in use, and that's why they liked option A. And so that would have helped guide your decision to add the product in use, maybe, you know, some other aspects of the winning image here.
And touching upon Kim's point about sort of the time it takes and how it only took 25 minutes, some of our larger customers do actually do exactly what she mentioned, what Kim mentioned, which is they run polls throughout the day, and they actually have their designers iterate after the results of each poll. And so in one day, we've seen some amazing iterations of polls and creatives. And you can tell that they're running polls, tweaking, running another poll, tweaking, and the finished product is generally pretty impressive, like if you go through that process.
Right. Yeah, and one of the interesting things, if you are working with colleagues, coworkers, is you can pin responses that you think are especially helpful. So, you know, if I like this answer and this answer and this answer, and I want to share that with my colleague, then I can actually take this URL and just, you know, share the pinned answers so that their eye goes exactly to the answers that I want them to see. Because, you know, there are 50 responses, but maybe 3 of them are really key, and this is what you want, you know, your coworker to take away from this whole thing. You can share that view that just shows those 3 answers up at the top, and that makes things faster as well.
Yep.
Okay, so Rena, we hope that was helpful to you and to anybody watching this. Again, you can also win your own free poll and analysis. Just go to this link, and who knows, maybe you will win. Okay, so this was a great discussion. I hope that this helped you write some better poll questions. I hope that you will go out there and try that new question builder. So that's going to do it for this session. Join us every 3rd Thursday of the month, and we will see you then. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.